An old story from the West tells of the Ghost Rider, who appears once every generation. This cursed soul is doomed to ride the earth, gathering deals made with the devil. Long ago, a ghost rider named Carter Slade was sent to the town of San Venganza to collect a contract holding 1,000 evil souls. The contract was so strong that Carter couldn't let Mephisto have it. So Carter fled with the contract, even escaping the devil himself. 150 years later, in 1986, Johnny Blaze and his father Barton perform as stunt motorcycle riders. Barton is upset with Johnny because he keeps losing focus due to his girlfriend Roxanne watching in the audience, which could risk his life during a show. Barton's health is getting worse each day, but he won't stop smoking despite Johnny throwing his cigarettes away many times. One afternoon, Roxanne comes to talk to Johnny with sad news her father is sending her to live with her mother. Johnny can't bear losing her and asks her to run away with him. Roxanne happily agrees, and they plan to leave the next day. Later that evening, while Barton is asleep, Johnny finds a letter in the trash from a hospital stating that Barton's cancer is spreading. Johnny is shocked his dad kept this a secret and starts thinking he might not be able to leave with Roxanne since abandoning Barton now would be heartless. His thoughts are suddenly interrupted by Mephisto, who offers Johnny a deal he will cure Barton's cancer in exchange for Johnny's soul. Johnny doesn't believe him but still looks at the contract out of curiosity. As he does, he accidentally cuts his finger on the paper. The drop of blood that falls on it is enough for Mephisto to consider the deal sealed. Before Johnny can ask what this means, he passes out and wakes up the next morning in his bed. Just as Mephisto promised, Barton's cancer is now cured. Barton is so thrilled by this that he's already planning a new show, possibly including a stunt where he jumps over a helicopter, and he wants Johnny to join him. But Johnny is getting ready to run away with Roxanne. Now that his dad is healthy, he feels he doesn't need him anymore and wants more from life than just dangerous stunts. These words hurt Barton, but he doesn't want Roxanne's dad to call the cops on them either, so he lets Johnny take his most prized bike. As Johnny is about to leave, he hears some noise coming from a tent and runs back to find out his father has died during the show after Mephisto paid him a quick visit. Scared of what the contract has gotten him into, Johnny rides away, thinking about ending things, but Mephisto stops him because he needs him alive. Mephisto also promises to come back when he needs him in the future. Before disappearing, he touches Johnny and ignites a flame inside him, telling him to leave behind everything he loves. Worried about what this means, Johnny takes his bike and drives past Roxanne, who is waiting for him, but leaves her without explaining why. 21 years later, in 2007, Johnny is a famous stunt rider known for surviving every single fall. When his stunts fail, it's because he keeps thinking about Mephisto and the contract, though he tries to tell himself he isn't scared. Johnny never gives interviews, but he gets along well with his traveling crew, especially his best friend Mac, who is worried about Johnny wanting to jump the length of a football field in cars on the anniversary of Barton's accident. Mac is also concerned about Johnny's obsession with strange religious books, thinking they might be affecting his mind, but Johnny brushes off his worries, saying he's waiting for a sign. Meanwhile, Mephisto's son Blackheart appears on Earth and goes to a biker bar to kill everyone inside. After everyone is dead, the hidden show up. They are three fallen angels connected with the elements. Gressel has earth-based powers, Abigail has air-based powers, and Wallow has water-based powers. Blackheart wants their help to find the San Venganza contract to use its great power to take over the world, and the hidden agree. But before they can start, Mephisto shows up outside to remind Blackheart it's not his time yet, but Blackheart doesn't care. Mephisto can't harm him on Earth because he hasn't fallen, though the Ghost Rider can. Still, Blackheart isn't afraid of Mephisto's creation and even challenges him to send the Ghost Rider after him, showing his jealousy that his father gave such power to a human instead of him. The next day, Johnny prepares for the show and avoids reporters as usual, but he changes his mind when he sees that Roxanne, now an adult, has come to interview him. Instead of answering her questions, Johnny keeps asking her about her life over the years. The interview ends quickly because it's going nowhere, and Roxanne leaves, despite her cameraman wanting to stay, as she never liked watching Johnny's jumps. To Johnny, seeing Roxanne feels like the sign he was waiting for, so he decides to follow through on his dad's old idea of jumping over several helicopters instead of cars. By thinking about Roxanne instead of his dark thoughts, Johnny's jump is a big success, but instead of stopping to celebrate, he drives out of the building to catch up with Roxanne's van on the road. Since she won't pull over or talk to him, Johnny speeds up and blocks the road to make the van stop. Roxanne is furious, but Johnny points out that if she really wanted nothing to do with him, she would have refused the interview before he kisses her. Roxanne pushes him away but sees his point and agrees to have dinner together later. As night falls, Roxanne waits at the restaurant, worried since she hasn't heard from Johnny, who is already quite late. Johnny is still at his apartment, delayed because his hands are becoming very red and hot. There's also a mysterious voice calling his name, and when he goes outside, he finds Mephisto, who wants Johnny to stop Blackheart as part of the contract. Johnny obviously refuses and gets on his bike, ready to go on his date, but the magic of the contract takes over. The bike suddenly bursts into flames and takes Johnny away at an insane speed, melting things as they pass by. Meanwhile, Blackheart and the Hidden arrive at the local train station, which used to be a cemetery. Rumors say the San Venganza contract was buried there. The station caretaker explains that the graves were moved to a church graveyard and tries to kick the group out, but Blackheart kills him. Meanwhile, Johnny's bike takes him to a warehouse at the train station, where he loses all control, and the magic turns him into a fiery skeleton known as Ghost Rider. Blackheart sees him, but doesn't take him seriously enough to fight him with full strength, so he sends Gressel to attack him and leaves. Johnny is stronger than he looks and easily escapes Blackheart's attack before jumping on Gressel and killing him in seconds with his special flame chain. Afterward, Johnny uses his new powers to change his bike into something more powerful and rides away until he sees a teenager being robbed. Johnny stops the robbery, and after the girl runs away safely, he grabs the thief and uses his penance stare on him. This power makes people feel all the pain they have caused others, burning their soul. The thief has hurt so many people in his life that he can't take the punishment and dies. Johnny then keeps riding until he reaches the local graveyard just as the sun rises. This turns him back to normal right when he gets to his father's grave, not knowing that Carter Slade is also buried nearby. The caretaker finds him there and takes Johnny to his small shack when he passes out. A few hours later, Johnny wakes up with a headache, but the caretaker reminds him that everything that happened last night was real and will happen again. Johnny needs to accept that being Ghost Rider is now part of his life. The caretaker offers to help, and after some hesitation, Johnny agrees. The caretaker then treats Johnny's wounds while telling him about the town of San Venganza, where all the citizens' souls were trapped forever after killing each other out of greed. Meanwhile, Roxanne is reporting on the disaster at the train station for the news, interviewing the teenager who almost got robbed, but not believing her when she describes a skeleton in flames. After the interview, Johnny approaches Roxanne to apologize, but she doesn't accept it, reminding him that this is the second time he's hurt her, and maybe her father was right, perhaps Johnny is just a phase. While the police find a bike license plate in the rubble, Johnny goes home and uses tips from his religious books to practice controlling his powers. His training is interrupted by Roxanne, who plans to leave town soon and wants to apologize for her harsh words. They end up kissing, but worried about his Ghost Rider situation, Johnny pushes her away because he doesn't want to put her in danger. This makes Roxanne furious, tired of Johnny's mixed signals, and she demands he tell her what's going on. She doesn't believe him and gets even angrier when he asks her to leave because the sun is setting. Heartbroken, she leaves, thinking Johnny is making excuses to push her away. As soon as Roxanne leaves, the cops arrive to arrest Johnny because the license plate they found belongs to his bike. At the police station, detectives try to use the good cop, bad cop routine and even threaten his career. But since Johnny doesn't fall for it, they put him in a cell until he's ready to talk. The cell is full of prisoners eager to beat up a famous person, but as soon as they get close, night falls and Johnny turns into Ghost Rider again, knocking out all the inmates with one hit, except for a young boy with a pure soul. After taking another prisoner's jacket, Johnny burns through the cell bars and escapes on his bike, ignoring the cops as he rides on water. Meanwhile, Blackheart visits a priest who supposedly knows where the San Venganza contract is hidden, but the priest refuses to talk and is killed. Blackheart senses Ghost Rider is coming after them, so he sends Abigail to stop him. Johnny chases Abigail all over the city while the cops chase Johnny. When Abigail climbs a tall building, Johnny rides his bike up the building as well. Roxanne sees this from her hotel room and begins to believe Johnny's story. At the top of the building, Johnny uses his chain to grab a police helicopter and throws it aside before turning to Abigail. The same trick doesn't work on Abigail, as he is made of air. Luckily, Johnny thinks fast and uses the chain to create a small fiery hurricane that captures Abigail and kills him. Afterward, Johnny lands his bike in the middle of the street and sees Roxanne in the curious crowd, but he can't go to her because the police are in the way. Their bullets can't hurt Johnny, so he pushes them back with a wall of fire and rides away safely. By sunrise, Johnny arrives at the graveyard and asks the caretaker for help. The caretaker explains the full story about Carter Slade and the stolen contract. He warns Johnny that Blackheart will do anything to get him, including hurting those he cares about. Worried, Johnny rushes back to the city to check on Roxanne. Meanwhile, the police are still looking for Johnny and ask Roxanne for help because she's close to him, but she pretends to know nothing. Later, Roxanne goes to Johnny's apartment and finds Mac, who is also trying to figure out what's going on with his best friend. Roxanne doesn't want to share the unbelievable story but agrees to look over the religious texts for clues with Mac. As night falls, Blackheart and Wallow visit the caretaker and beat him up, trying to make him reveal the contract's location. When the caretaker doesn't break, Blackheart decides to go after Johnny instead. Moments later, Blackheart arrives at Johnny's apartment. After killing Mac, he turns to Roxanne to find a way to use her against Johnny. Johnny arrives just in time and fights Blackheart, but his penance stare doesn't work on Blackheart because he doesn't have a soul. Blackheart takes this chance to push Johnny away and reverses his transformation, then kidnaps Roxanne, telling Johnny he must bring the San Venganza contract if he wants to see her again. Moments later, Johnny is back at the graveyard and convinces the caretaker to give him the contract, which had been hidden in his shovel all along. Since Johnny made his deal out of love, not greed, the caretaker trusts he can stop Blackheart. He offers his help and reveals that the Carter Slade grave is fake. The caretaker is actually Carter Slade and still has his Ghost Rider powers. He calls his horse, and they ride together to guide Johnny to San Venganza. Unfortunately, the caretaker can't stay because this is the last time he could transform, but he gives Johnny a shotgun before leaving. Johnny's first opponent is Wallow, who tries to drown him in his swamp, but water can't hurt Johnny, and he uses his flames to evaporate the demon. Next, Johnny goes after Blackheart, making him drop Roxanne before pretending to give him the contract. This is just a trick that leads to another fight, but as the sun comes up, Johnny loses his powers and can't stop Blackheart from grabbing the contract and absorbing the power of all the souls, transforming him into Legion. Johnny still refuses to give up and shoots Legion with his shotgun, but the bullets don't hurt him. Legion grabs Johnny by the neck, ready to kill him. Luckily, Roxanne retrieves the shotgun and blows up Legion's head, making him drop Johnny. While Legion takes a moment to regenerate, Johnny takes the shotgun from Roxanne and transforms it, just like he did with his bike, by putting it in the shadows. The problem is sunlight itself, not just the time of day. A shot from this powered weapon blows up Legion, and while he regenerates again, Johnny sees the souls forming the demon's body, which gives him an idea. By stepping into the shadows, Johnny turns back into Ghost Rider, and this time he can use his penance stare because now Legion has thousands of souls to be judged. By burning all the corrupt souls, Legion dies too. With their enemy defeated, Roxanne touches Johnny's flaming face, showing she isn't afraid of him before kissing him. As they leave, they meet Mephisto, who congratulates Johnny on a job well done and asks for the Ghost Rider power back. However, Johnny refuses to return it because he doesn't want it to fall into the wrong hands, so he'll keep it to protect the innocent. Unfortunately, this means Johnny can't have a normal life again. After Mephisto is gone, he says goodbye to Roxanne, who understands because this is who Johnny has always been. They share one last kiss before Johnny rides his bike into the sunset to start a new life as the only Ghost Rider. Don't forget to subscribe and enable notifications to catch more videos like this. Thank you for watching.